Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and I wanted to try out a game that I've always been interested in, but never sat down and gave it a try. It's always been in my peripheral, but every single time I'm like, oh, I should give that a go. It's like, there's other first-person shooters out there, there's other video games that I'm more interested at the time, and I've just never gotten around to it. But today, I have finally sat down and played Hawken. As you guys can see, this is a mech first-person shooter, and honestly, I've never been a fan of mech combat normally. I would say that Titanfall was like the gateway drug right now because I really enjoyed it in that game, but growing up, I was never a fan of it. I felt like the controls were always clunky, playing it on the PlayStation 2, those mech combat games. They were enjoyable, my friends would bring them over, but I would never go out and buy one myself. And so that was actually one of the biggest things that I was concerned about going into this, was I just wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy the clunky, or not necessarily clunky, but the mech combat in general. It's got a different type of feel to it than a lot of standard first-person shooters. It's got a lot of different mechanics, and I wasn't exactly sure if that was gonna click with me. And while there are still some things that I'm not 100% sold on, for the most part, my gameplay experience while playing Hawken was a positive one. I was playing with a bunch of different mechs. They all had different positives and negatives to them, and overall, I was having fun, kicking ass. I was getting on top of the scoreboard every once in a while, and having a good time. And one of the things that I quickly learned, and they basically drill it into your brain every single time you spawn in, is that you have to work with your team. If you don't stick together and you try to go for the lone wolf, you try to capture different objectives by yourself, while every once in a while you can be successful if you get a nice little flank off on the enemy and quickly try to whittle them down, if you go against more than one mech, you're gonna have a bad time. Like, this is not a Twitch shooter. There are Twitch aspects of it. There are some weapons that have that type of gameplay, but overall, mechs have a lot of health, and if you want to take down a mech, you're gonna have to be firing at them continuously. And because of that, there's no way for you to quickly dispatch of an enemy player. And so if there are two people in front of you and you try to solo them, this isn't like Call of Duty or even Battlefield, where you can take one out quickly, duck behind cover, maybe regenerate some health, and then go on a rampage and finish off the others. Like, no, that's not gonna happen. You could potentially take out one of them. Like, don't get me wrong, if you go 2 versus 1 and you're very skillful, you land all your shots, you're nailing them with all of your rockets, you can potentially take out one of them, but you're probably not going to come out of that engagement alive. The other one is going to be able to finish you off no problem, because they now have like 700 health that you have to try and slowly whittle them down. And so if you go into this assuming that you're going to be able to play like a standard first-person shooter, just completely leave that at the door, because it's not viable at all. Like, I went against some players that tried to go the whole lone wolf, and because I was working with my teammates, we absolutely destroyed them. And so if you're looking for that team-oriented gameplay, Hawken has that in spades, and that would be a strength of the game. But also, at the same time, if you're in a team that isn't working together, it can be absolutely infuriating. Like, there were a lot of rounds when I was just trying to find my teammates after I died. Like, everyone seemed to be doing their own thing. If you're playing on team deathmatch, the maps can be very large and expansive, and so I would be running around just trying to work with my teammates, but because they're all off just dilly-daddling everywhere, trying to go for the whole lone wolf mentality, we got just obliterated off the map. Like, they were working together, we weren't. And so when you have those types of maps and you have those matches where no one seems to want to work together, it can be frustrating. And so while on the one hand, if you are working with your teammates, it can be an absolute blast, and if you want that team-oriented gameplay, then that has it in spades. But at the same time, if you're running around with a lot of randoms, it can be kind of a nightmare. As for the mechs themselves, I was pretty surprised at how much variety was there. I was pretty much basing all of my mech combat off of Titanfall. I would say that Titanfall does a good job at trying to have some balanced gameplay, but there isn't a lot of variety there. There's only 3 different mechs. They have a couple of different abilities there, but the only major difference between them is that some have more health and some can dash a little bit more frequently, and that's about it in Titanfall. But in Hawken, because it's completely centered around different mechs, it's a lot more fleshed out. Each class or each mech has different abilities, they have a different play style, and if you're looking for a certain type of combat, you're probably gonna find it in Hawken. I was having a lot of fun fun with the Reaper, I think that's what it's called, and it's more of a sniper-oriented mech where you just try to take out people at a distance. And what I enjoyed about it is that if I got up close and personal, I got absolutely destroyed. Like, I could still do a lot of damage, but I don't have a lot of health. And so the entire time, I'm just trying to keep the distance from my enemies. Like, I'll see them off in the distance, take a couple of shots, but as they try to use the environment to their advantage, weaving in and out, I'm also trying to weave in and out and trying to keep that distance between us. And usually, the ones that I was going against were people that were playing in mechs that were, I think, quote-unquote, assassins. And so their main job is basically to close the gap as fast as they can, try to get up close and personal, and then just absolutely destroy you. They also have bruiser-type mechs. They have tanky mechs that just take a lot of damage. They bombard the enemy. They have suppression mechs. There is a lot of different variety here, and so pretty much any type of gameplay that you're looking for is represented in Hawken, and that was amazing to see. Like, if you wanted to be a healer, if you want to be a tank, a sniper, an assassin, stealthy, it's pretty much all here. And probably the best part is that when I went online to see what mech I should purchase or which ones I should try out first, it seemed like the general consensus is that all the mechs are pretty well balanced. And so since this is a free-to-play, I should have mentioned that this is a free-to-play game, I was a little worried that it was going to be pay-to-win. And while there is still some pay-to-win aspects of it, because you can buy mechs, and if you're in the mentality, well then, if you can buy mechs, that means you're buying power, and I would agree with you. At the same time, it didn't feel like I was going against players that just bought power, and I had no way of competing against them. I was using the standard mech that comes from the very beginning. It's like the novice one, and I was still getting on the top of the scoreboard, and I don't know if that was just simply because I was going against players that didn't know what they were doing, and maybe when I rise up in the ranks, that basic mech isn't going to be up to standard. But at least from what I gathered from online and from reading forums, it seems while there is a couple of higher tiered mechs out there, which is unavoidable, you can't have that in basically any game. There's always going to be something that's slightly better unless you have a carbon copy of everything. But for the most part, it's good to see that a free-to-play game didn't just go blatantly to the pay-to-win route, and there is some nice balance there. The one thing that I'm not 100% sold on, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to it, is the actual mech combat itself. It feels like you're in a mech. Like, when you land on the ground, it takes you a second to get going again. When you strafe back and forth, it feels like you're in a gigantic robot, and that's awesome. But for someone who isn't 100% sold on that idea, and when I play a first-person shooter, I like to be fully in control of my character, and I'm not necessarily saying that you're not in control, but that weightiness gets a little annoying for me. And I don't necessarily know why, and this could be something that you guys really enjoy, but for me, who enjoys playing a little bit more of the Twitch shooters compared to something like this, it was hard for me to adjust. Maybe I just need to spend more hours into it. I think I've only spent around 5 to 6 so far, and maybe I just need to put it in like 10 and I'm gonna get nailed down. But that weightiness, while it was refreshing, like you definitely feel like you're in a gigantic robot, it gets annoying when you're trying to evade and get away from an enemy and you're just constantly slamming into things, or at least that was my problem. Maybe I'm just a noob, I have no idea what I was doing, but that was one thing that did get on my nerves. But overall, I had a lot of fun with Hawken. I can see myself playing this every once in a while, and so if you enjoy the Titanfall gameplay, you enjoy getting into those mechs, I would recommend giving this a go. It's gonna take some time getting used to it, and make sure you are running around with some friends or working with your teammate, because that is very important in this game. But if you want to try something a little bit different, and it's free to play, so there is no entry fee, and it seems to be well balanced, I highly recommend that you give this a go. But that is about it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your experience has been with Hawken. Has it been as positive as mine has been? Let me know down below in the comment section. But until tomorrow, have a good one, and take it easy.